All right, let's jump right into it. In this explainer, we are going to tackle a massive question. I mean, a really big one. In a world where a lot of us aren't looking to divine commands for moral guidance anymore, how do we figure out what's right and wrong? We're going to explore one really interesting answer to that very question. So, this is the question that really kicks the whole thing off. It was famously asked by Tucker Carlson to evolutionary biologist Brett Weinstein, and it's a deep one. If we don't have some kind of inherent God-given value, what's stopping us from just descending into total chaos? Where does our sense of right and wrong actually come from?
And here's the core idea we're going to unpack today. The proposal is that morality isn't some abstract truth floating around in the cosmos. Nope. Instead, it's a practical evolutionary tool. Value isn't something we just have. It's something that emerges from the things we do, the actions that help our communities, our groups survive and thrive over the long haul.
Now, this is a pretty massive shift in thinking, right? It's moving away from seeing morality as a set of commands from on high and looking at it more like a survival strategy. In this view, the whole point of ethics is fundamentally about keeping the game going. Okay, but if you go down this evolutionary road, you run smack into a classic problem. Does survival justify anything? Or are there some rules that you just can't or shouldn't break no matter what? So this brings us to the two classic camps. On one side, you've got moral relativism. It's strength, it's adaptable, it's pragmatic. But its weakness is that it can be corrupted really easily, leading to moral decay. On the other side, you have moral universalism. Its strength is stability. It builds trust. But its weakness, it can be super rigid, brittle even, and that inflexibility could get you wiped out in a real crisis. Each one has a serious downside. The challenge is, how do you get the good stuff from both without getting trapped by their weaknesses? And this leads to a really powerful idea called the boomerang effect. This is a huge warning against going all in on relativism. The basic idea is that if your society starts tolerating cruelty towards some outgroup, those habits, they don't just stay at the border. They boomerang. They seep back into your own group and start poisoning the trust and stability from the inside out. Okay, so if pure relativism can rot you from the inside and pure universalism can snap under pressure, what's the answer? Well, we need a third way, a new kind of moral compass that gives us the stability of solid rules, but also the flexibility we need to survive a real storm. And that right there is where this framework comes in, Survival Cooperation Ethics, or SCE for short. It's an attempt to build that third way, to synthesize the best of both of those worlds into one practical system. So, what's the big idea with SCE? Well, at its heart, it tries to blend a solid foundation of universal principles with a layer of controlled, smart flexibility. And, this is the key part, it includes a very strict break glass in case of emergency protocol for true existential threats. The whole goal is to balance the need to survive over the long term with the need to stay stable over the long term. And to really get how this works, there's a great metaphor. Think of it like a tree. SCE basically has three core pillars: the roots, the branches, and a plan for how to handle the really bad storms. So first up, pillar one, the universal floor. These are the roots of our moral tree. We're talking about the absolute non-negotiables, things like honesty, respect, trust, and protecting life. The idea is that these principles anchor the whole system in solid ground so that the society doesn't just rot from within. Next, you've got the branches. This is pillar two, context flexibility. This is where the system can bend and adapt to the real world. It means actions can be adjusted based on the situation. It allows for people in different roles, say a doctor versus a soldier, to have different duties. And it respects cultural differences, just as long as those differences don't break the rules of that universal floor. And finally, we get to the third and maybe the most critical part of this whole framework, the emergency override. This is the plan for surviving the storm. We're talking about that rare existential crisis that threatens to rip the entire tree out of the ground. This is not a casual loophole. It's a serious protocol for when your group's very survival is on the line. But here's the catch. You can't just flip this switch whenever you want. No way. The framework proposes this super rigorous 6-part test to prevent it from being abused. It forces you to ask, is this threat really an existential one? Is this the absolute least harmful thing we can do? Can we ever undo it? Is there a public plan to stop and fix the damage? It's not a get-out-of-jail-free card. It's a carefully calibrated emergency brake. Okay, so that's the big picture, the theory of it all. But what does this actually mean for you?
How can you take these ideas and turn them into a personal toolkit for navigating your own life? This table really breaks it down nicely. That universal floor, that's your daily life, being honest, trustworthy, building up your personal integrity. The context flexibility, that's about being smart and adapting, like how generous you are might depend on the situation. And the emergency override, that's your absolute last resort. Like you only lie to save someone's life from immediate danger, and then you have to work to repair the trust that was broken. So at the end of the day, the key takeaway is that survival cooperation ethics isn't meant to be just some abstract philosophy to debate. The goal is for it to be a practical guide, a real toolkit for strengthening your own character and for helping to build a more resilient, more trustworthy society. And that really just leaves us with one final thought. Look, we all hope we never face that kind of society-shaking storm, right? But crises happen, and when they do, our flexibility, our branches, will get tested for sure. But ultimately, it's the strength of our roots, those universal principles that will decide whether we stand or fall. So it's worth asking yourself, in a crisis, how strong are your roots?